you can be criminalised for being black in England? Should we have the Euros here? Black people are being stopped every day in the street. They're being stopped in their cars. They're being arrested for being black. And that's the only reason.
I would push back to say that there's a quantitative difference between there is no law which says that you can be jailed for being black, whereas there is a law that says you can be jailed for being gay.
Right.
So I think there's a qualitative difference.
Yeah, okay. Well, when the police arrest black people for being black, is that unlawful? So the police are acting unlawfully. When they stop black people in the streets every day and there's no law, are they acting unlawfully?
I would say yes. I would say yes, because that's not within the law of this country.
So which country is worse? Where the authorities act unlawfully by discriminating against people when it's against the law to discriminate against them, or are in Qatar where it's against the law to be gay. And I can tell you, gay people aren't being arrested in Qatar for being gay.
World Cups. John, firstly, thank you so much for coming on the programme.
It's a pleasure.
Even for a Man United fan like me, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on. In terms of group stages of international tournament, there's a lot of sussing people out early on. And I think in the first match, great result against Iran for England. But a lot of people asking, was it because England were really good or because Iran were really poor? And I think the Wales game has just shown us that actually it's because England should be considered contenders now.
Well, of course, the fact that they beat Iran 6-2, I don't think you're necessarily going to say they were contenders because of that. They were contenders before, because you could look at it as losing 4-0 at home to Hungary and say we haven't got a hope. But of course, neither one of those results has made us any more of a contender or less of a contender. We're a good side who can go a long way in the tournament. And as we've seen, the big thing about a lot of the so-called smaller teams is their attitude and their self-belief. You can see Iran had no self-belief against England. In the first half, they sat back and defended. In fact, if you watch Wales against America, in the first half, America were the much better team. Wales in the second half came on, and they were the better side. Now, Iran today was a shadow of itself in terms of the way they played against England. They played really well today because they wanted to attack. They had self-belief. They didn't have self-belief against England. Now, unfortunately for Wales, it's going to be very difficult for them to qualify now because they have to beat England to go through. But I think that from England's perspective, we will see that we've beaten a very good team in Iran because the results leading up to it, where they've beaten Uruguay and drew with Senegal, shows they're not a bad side. So a 6-2 result against Iran, as much as Iran didn't have much belief, was a great result for England.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the FIFA top 20 rankings for a reason. But I'm interested in your discussion about belief being so much a part of this. And also we've seen in previous tournaments, momentum being a huge part of success. Yeah. And it's really that mental part of the game. So what is it like in camp as an England player when, particularly in a group stage, you are expected to do well? The pressure is all on you.
Yeah. Well, of course, just to go back to what belief can do, you saw Saudi Arabia going 1-0 down to Argentina. They come back to win, as did Japan against Germany. So if you have belief because they're good players, that takes you a long way. From the so-called favourites perspective, of which England are one of the favourites to go through, it's a question of to play with humility, to understand that these are going to be difficult games, and it's not a situation whereby, yes, we're the best in the group, we should go through easily, so we're going to approach the game in a very blasé type of a way. They have to go out and they have to make it happen. Obviously, times have changed. Nowadays, players are more mollycoddled. They're well looked after. Nowadays, we were looking for some extracurricular activity, mainly sneaking out to try and have a couple of drinks. Whereas these days, I think that the players have got lots to keep them occupied. So they're just going to be fully focused on the match. As I said, they had a great result in the first game. I think that the Wales defeat would have buoyed the England team, because I don't think England would have liked to have gone into that game with Wales having, already won one and drawn one. So, but as I said, they also have to get through the group stages. We never struggled. We did struggle once or twice. In '86, we lost a couple of games. Ray Wilkins got sent off. So the name of the game in the group stage is to get out of the group, and then after that, you can really see the World Cup taking shape.
Do you know what's always interested me in big tournaments like this is when you see a difference between a player for their club and for their country. And sometimes it's because there's a different setup, and the national team plays in a different style or a different formation maybe. But it does seem to me that sometimes just some players just get a fear, or they're overawed by the occasion, even if they play for big clubs. I mean, is that fair?
I think it's more to do with the fact that the setup. I was very similar. The way that Liverpool played suited me. The way England played didn't necessarily suit me. All the skillful players, Chris Waddle, Glenn Hull, we always struggled with England back then because it was about aggression and commitment and, fight. It wasn't the occasion because, of course, I was very calm when I played for Liverpool in big matches. So it wasn't the occasion, and I'm sure it's not the occasion because when you play for your club, you play in big occasions. It's more to do with the style of football suiting you. And with England, there are certain players who it suits them better to play for England than for their clubs. Look at Harry Maguire, look at Luke Shaw, players who may not be playing very well for their club, but they play well for England. So it's nothing to do with the pressure with them. It's just the fact
Bit
that
of anti-Man United shade there, John. I'm noted.
Well, you say anti-Man United shade. I've also said that they should be playing for England. So there's no anti-Man United shade at all. I would have said that they should be the England team because they're not doing particularly well for Man United. But I'm making the point as the way England plays probably suits Harry Maguire more than the way Manchester United plays. So I don't think it's necessarily the pressure because they're big players who play for big clubs. It's more to do with the style of football when it comes to international football suiting them.
And in terms of a World Cup being such a big event, it only comes around every 4 years. There are players that, they look forward to it. They plan some of their sort of rehabilitation if they've been injured, etc., to try and make it to that biggest of big stages. How disappointing is it, do you think, to a player that a World Cup like this, which they may only get one or two of in their career, is overshadowed by negative headlines on things like the One Love armband or on supporters being told they can't get access to support their team and things like that?
Well, first of all, the World Cup comes around once every 4 years. So after this World Cup, they're not going to be thinking about the World Cup for 4 years. They won't be thinking about it for 3 years. Really, in the year leading up to it is when you start thinking about how you play for your club and your form. And of course, as you rightly mentioned, this is probably a bit of a distraction in terms of what they're being asked to do, when in reality, we know that the players they don't really have much interest in whatever else is going on. They're being thrust into the limelight that, hey, let's support LGBT, let's take a knee, let's talk about human rights issues. But really, throughout their lives, they don't really think about that. They don't think about it until it rears its ugly head or until a microphone's thrown at them, and then they're being held up as beacons of virtue to then say they're the ones who are carrying it forward, which they don't. This is a societal issue. And of course,
do we ask too much of our footballers then?
We absolutely do, and they have no control over it. Footballers could do nothing about changing people's perceptions. I don't know whether they think it themselves or whether we just absolve ourselves of responsibility to look at society and look at cultures and look at governments and just say, well, the footballers are going to do it, because the footballers can do nothing. The fact that Harry Kane is going to score a goal is not going to change people's perception. The fact that the World Cup is in Qatar is not going to make them change their laws. So therefore, and in fact, if you look at why are we so condescending and supercilious to feel that we can really make a change in terms of their attitude towards LGBT, that's not going to change at all, and we have to stop doing it. If we're going to go there, we have to be respectful of their culture. I don't agree with obviously homosexuality being illegal, but if we're going to say this is where the World Cup is, we have to be respectful of their culture, of their laws, of their religion. And when we go there, stop trying to force our way of thinking on them. Now, obviously, that isn't going to work. Nobody's ever forced to change culturally in the history. And if you understand colonialism, you know that hasn't worked ever. So, of course, we have to enter into dialogue. We can't go there in a fashion and say, we're here to teach you, you're here to learn, particularly from a Black perspective. Because I remember 400 years ago, Europeans coming to Africa to civilize us and to teach us and to bring us in line with what they want. And of course, that is not really what they were doing there.
I accept all your points. I am interested, though, as a gay woman myself, I am interested with whether this idea that you obey the rules in the country that you visit for everything else, and you should do on this.
Yeah.
But whether a country for whom, a significant proportion of the world's population, and therefore a significant proportion of football fans that will be attending the event, could be criminalised just for being in a open and recognised relationship as it would be in their home country, whether it should ever have been awarded to a country wherein they can be criminalised.
Well, that is the question, but it is there. It is there. And as much as I don't agree with it, and in fact, you can be criminalised for being Black in England. Should we have the Euros here? Black people are being stopped every day in the street. They're being stopped in their cars. They're being arrested for being Black. And that's the only reason.
I would push back to say that there's a quantitative difference between there is no law which says that you can be jailed for being Black, whereas there is a law that says you can be jailed for being gay.
Right.
So I think there's a qualitative difference.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when the police arrest Black people for being Black, is that unlawful? So the police are acting unlawfully. When they stop Black people in the streets every day and there's no law, are they acting unlawfully? I would say yes. I would say yes, because that's not within the law of this country. So which country is worse, where the authorities act unlawfully by discriminating against people when it's against the law to discriminate against them, or are in Qatar where it's against the law to be gay? And I can tell you, gay people aren't being arrested in Qatar for being gay. Now, of course,
John, do
in
you know,
terms of
I
the
wish we'd
overt-
got onto this quicker, because I don't know if you can hear the music in the background. It means that
because they're
we're
much more
26
tolerant in
seconds
Qatar.
up to the news, because we should have had a much bigger conversation about this.
come
But
on,
I
talk
do
about
thank
this.
you for joining us.
Thank
Yeah, we'll have you back on the show at any point to
Definitely.
discuss all of this. And thank you so much for joining
Absolutely.
us.